Hi, welcome to our day one of our Healthy Habits workshop. Um, we have a lot to cover this week, and am grateful that you're here, starting this journey for yourself towards better nutrition. Before you ever even get focused on what you're actually ingesting and kind of biohacking yourself, um, the most important thing you can do for your health is to look at your relationship with food and learning new habits regarding the choices that you make so that when you make these changes in your life, they're sustainable and they become second nature and you don't even think about them anymore. So that's what this workshop is all about. Um, the reason that I even started Food Dance and this workshop is a lot of it is just my analyzing my own relationship with food growing up. I remember my mom really struggled with her weight. She had been on every diet that they had in the 80s. Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem. We had the Richard Simmons Deal a Meal cards and did the workouts and exercise equipment. And it just always, like, she struggled. It would work for a while and we would try to support her. And she was so passionate and motivated, and it was not for a lack of her effort, but the weight would always come back as soon as she stopped the diet. And basically it's because fundamentally diets aren't sustainable. Like, you kind of have to be on them until you die, because as soon as you go off of them and now your habits have gone back to what they were, the health issues are going to come back, your weight's going to come back. So changing your relationship with food and your habits around food are far more important. And so that's really what we want to focus on in this workshop. um, Diets are hard to commit to. We have a natural rebellious streak, and as we shouldn't deny ourselves, because when we tell ourselves no, it's like the only thing that we want. Diets really can lower your self-esteem. Like, when you're struggling at it and you have, fail one day and following it, now you're all down on yourself. They can be really cost prohibitive. Gosh, I remember those Weight Watchers and Nutrisystem, like, you'd buy their meal plans in addition to what you paid for the program, and it was just astronomically expensive. So um, again, it's diets are just like not the way to go, and they don't help support health or proper nutrition. They put value judgments on macro and micronutrients, and you need all of those. Your body needs fats and carbohydrates and vitamins to sustain itself, and they shouldn't be viewed as good or bad. Yes, there are some that are better than others, and you can look at amounts, but diets that exclude any one of them in their entirety or consider them bad just aren't something that should be followed. So we really feel like wellness, we want to view a healthy diet as an unrestricted diet that isn't exclusively focused on what you're eating, but the whole act of eating. So in this Healthy Habits workshop, we're going to focus on 4 different areas. Today is going to be about learning or identifying your own food story, and then rewriting it, because most of us don't have a perfect food story. And in order to change our habits and give ourselves actionable goals, we need to, one, identify that story and then rewrite that story for ourselves. Tomorrow, we're going to do the Foodie Finder Day, which is really identifying your nutrition motivations surrounding the types of foods that you choose to eat, the time of day that you eat, all of those things. And then also our blocks that we might have that are preventing us from making changes. The third day will be prepping for success. So what are the strategies that you can do on a daily basis, and how you set up your kitchen in prepping for the week. Just strategies that you can set up to be kind to your future self, to make these changes so much easier for yourself, so you don't have to think about them, and eventually they'll just become second nature and part of who you are. And then the fourth day is just about celebrating food. We're going to talk about recipes and just celebrating living our best food dance life. And then the fourth or the fifth day will just be a live Q&A. I encourage you, as we are doing the workshop this week, if you could email me at email@fooddance.org. That might be really helpful because some people may have the same questions. And that way I can kind of get on and start with questions that you already have, and then I can get to as many of the ones live as possible. It's just going to be a short, probably 15-minute Q&A. And then anything that I need to do a deeper dive on for you, I'm happy to do that, and I can email that response to you as well. But typically these workshops bring up the same kinds of questions. So it's awesome if you can email me, but if not, you can just chat them in during the live Q&A if you're able to attend. So let's get started. Today we're going to identify our food story, and many of us have never even thought about like our relationship with food. And then we're going to redefine that relationship and rewrite our food story to something that is more positive, healthy, and can give us attainable goals. So before we get started, make sure you have a notebook and pen handy because you're going to do some work. Or if you've printed out the worksheet for today, that you can use, that's helpful. It's also, if you haven't seen it yet, it's down below in the comment section. You'll see a link if you want to print that out real quick. But a notebook's fine too. So redefining your relationship with food starts with writing, or more accurately, rewriting your food story. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions. I mean, we all grew up writing 5-paragraph essays. Writing any story utilizes the same who, what, when, where, why, and how. So that's what we're going to focus on. But they're going to be very specific who, what, when, where, why, and how questions. So the first question that we're going to focus on is who is producing and preparing your food. So go ahead and write that down. And what that means is, where's your food coming from and who's making it for you on a daily basis? And be specific. Think about the things that you eat in a week and go ahead and write those down. And for each of these, if you want to pause the video, because I'm not going to sit here with a blank for 5 minutes, but all right, that was not usually too complicated. So the second question that you want to answer is what food and beverages do you typically eat or drink in a day or week? So, and be honest with yourself. There's no reason to lie to yourself. Like, write down, if it's too hard to think of a full week, just write down all the things that you had in a day, and maybe just kind of estimate the things that you might eat in a week. And we're talking breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, and beverages. Like if you drink tea, coffee, soda, juices, write those down and write approximately how many you might have in a week if you can. If not, just write the types of food foods that you're eating. That's fine too. And include any fast food. And that's a good one to see the number of times a week too. It can be an eye opener sometimes for people. All right, so write that one down and then unpause and come back. Okay, so the third question is looking at when you normally eat these items. So when I'm asking that, it's times of day, but also what you're doing when you're eating these items. So go ahead and write those down. If it's all over the map, depending on what you're doing, write that down. Again, these are just something that you want to physically see so that you have an accounting for yourself. Okay, and then the where is, where do you typically eat your meals, snacks, and beverages? And again, be specific. Are you eating in the car? Are you eating at work? Are you going out and eating in a restaurant? Are you eating with family at the table? Or are you eating at the couch watching TV? And write this down for each meal and what's typical. Or if it again is all over the map, maybe the number of times a week that you eat each of these things in these locations. And then pause and come back. All right, and then the fifth question is why? Why do you make these your current food purchases? and your eating choices. What do you feel like motivates your purchases and eating choices? And it can be anything. No judgment. This is again you just kind of thinking about why you make the decisions that you do, whether it's time, financial, you like to just eat them, or whatever the case may be. Um, but just get an accounting for yourself, and then come back. All right, and then the last question is how do you feel about food in general and your current nutrition and health? Um, so dive a little deep. Like, do you feel like you're healthy? Do you think you could do better? I'm guessing most people that would do this workshop probably are here to make some improvements. So, but be honest with yourself. And then also really assess like, what do you feel like your relationship with food is? Do you feel like you have a negative opinion about food? Does it stress you out kind of thinking about what you're going to eat on a daily basis? Do you get down on yourself when you eat certain things? So yeah, I write all these down and then come back and we'll start part 2. Okay, so we finished part 1, identifying your own food story. Um, hopefully it was a little eye-opening for you. Sometimes we never think about it and then we see it on paper and we're like, oh gracious, like I didn't realize I, ate in front of the TV 5 days a week. Like I never really thought about it. So so it's a good exercise to do. All right, so part 2, we're gonna go through those same questions, but we're gonna change what you do to should. Like, what should you be doing in each of these? So, the first question is who should be producing and preparing your food? And then question 2 is what food and beverages should you typically drink in a day or week? Question 3 is when should you normally eat these items? Question 4, where should you typically eat your meals, snacks, and beverages? Question 5 is why should you make your current food purchases and eating choices? And then question 6 is how should you feel about food and your current nutrition and health? So go ahead and re-answer those 6 questions, replacing do with should. And then when you come back, we'll discuss what those answers ideally should be, and then we'll work on part 3. Okay, welcome back. So let's talk a little bit about what those answers about should be. All right, so the first question, who should be producing the food that you eat? Um, Food should come from farms, not factories, and it should be prepared by you or a loved one. Um, Heavily processed foods, manufactured foods, they have very little nutritional value. The nutrients are stripped from those foods when they're processed, and then sometimes vitamins and minerals are added back in to make them look healthy, but those vitamins and minerals are much less bioavailable. And then most companies add considerable amounts of fat and sugar to make them taste good, far more than you would ever add when you're cooking your own foods at home. And so not only are they stripped of nutrients that they had when they were whole foods, but now they're full of fat and sugar, and what little nutrients they may have, again, are less bioavailable, so your body can't really use them in the same way. And then often processed foods have preservatives, artificial coloring and flavorings. So they're just, which your body can't process those things. They aren't occurring naturally in them. So they're just really not healthy. They're not food. Um, and the number one take home is that manufacturers care about their profit, not your prosperity. So they're not out there to make a healthy product for you. Um, there are some better companies out there, but just the process of manufacturing just strips a lot of the nutrients from the food, even when they're using organic ingredients and all of that. So you really want to be mindful of what you're consuming. Um, and if you're going to buy processed foods, there are minimally processed foods where they're actually using whole foods. They aren't breaking them down and then recreating something. And the packaging will typically say minimally processed, and all of the ingredients will be identifiable. So, the question one. So, basically, your food should come from farms, not factories, and it should be prepared by you or a loved one. Okay, and then question two, what food and beverages should you be drinking in a week? So simple answer, you should be eating whole, real foods that are either fresh or frozen and are minimally processed. They're going to have the bioavailable macro and micronutrients that your body needs to stay healthy, and they aren't going to have, fats and sugars in excess that can make us sick. All right, and then question three, when should you normally eat these items? Simplest answer is when you're hungry. If you're eating when you're not hungry, or if you're eating in excess of being satisfied, it causes weight gain, it throws off your metabolic system, and it can lead to poor physical and mental health. So if you feel hungry, eat. If you don't feel hungry, don't. If you have not been listening to your body for so long that your system is kind of thrown off and your hunger cues aren't there or aren't very accurate, it may take a little bit longer to reset that, but your body will do it. And then there's strategies that you can do to get yourself to that point, which we'll talk about when we're talking about setting yourself up for success on day 3. So, so don't fret if you're in that situation, but really outside of being hungry, you shouldn't be eating. Your body is doing other things. It doesn't need food at that point. So don't feed it something it doesn't need. All right. All right. And then question 4, where should you typically be eating your meals and snacks? And really that's wherever it can be a dedicated activity for you, where you can practice eating mindfully and not be distracted. When you're eating in your car, when you're eating in front of the TV, you're eating at work, if you're just generally distracted while you're eating, that goes hand in hand with making poor food choices and overeating, because you're not paying attention to those cues that you have. And you're generally like in a hurry and distracted, so you're not likely to make the best food choices in those situations. So, dedicating a time and place where you can eat more slowly and mindfully allows you to pick up on those body cues. It gives you a moment to think about what you're eating. You're going to make better choices. So really try to start moving towards, if that's something that you struggle with, try to start moving towards making eating a more dedicated activity. And this one's one I struggle with. I'm notorious for grabbing a snack while I'm watching a movie just to have something to snack on. But when you do those behaviors, and we'll talk about that in part 3 of this, you can make more mindful choices that are healthier, that aren't going to affect you in a negative way. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, ultimately, you want eating to be a dedicated activity so that you can be more aware of your body cues. Right, and then question 5, what should motivate your food purchases and food choices? And really, you should just be making food choices to optimize your nutrition and well-being. It's what food's for, is to nourish and sustain us, so that you shouldn't have any motivations about purchasing food or eating outside of optimizing your nutritional health. All right, and then the last question, how should you feel about food and your health? I think this is an easy answer. It should make you want to dance. You should feel healthy enough to do so. Food gives us life and health and wellness, and it should be a source of joy and celebration, not something daunting and negative. So that's where we want to get to. So now that we've done what you're currently doing and what you should be doing, part three, we're going to rewrite our story. We're going to take what we should be doing and put it up against what we are doing and write actionable goals for ourselves for what we will do and or we won't do. So go ahead and get out the questions again, and we're going to go through these together this time. I'm going to provide examples so that you can work on creating these goals for yourself to change your habits for long-term success. Okay, so now let's rewrite our food story. What we're going to do is reframe our should responses to I do or I will or I don't statements. You want to take into account what you're currently doing that doesn't align with what you should be doing, and then reframe that into an actionable goal where you are taking ownership of your choice. So, the best example of this I can think of is when I was going through the question on what I typically eat in a week or a month. I used to love Taco Bell. Many of us do, and I really wanted to cut out all fast food and processed foods. So, but that was a tough one. It's like so easy to get at lunch or grab on the way home when we've had a really long, busy day. But it's not really food. So it was really important to me that I cut this out. So instead of denying myself and framing the statement in like I can't have Taco Bell, because I'm rebellious by nature, and immediately I'd be like, I can have Taco Bell if I want to have Taco Bell. I changed it into something that was my identity. Like I don't eat Taco Bell, and did it at the early on in the year, and this was a year ago, and was really tempted that first month because we would go like 3 or 4 times a month to grab like a quick snack or something, and I just when we have the discussion or if I was on my own and I would be tempted to turn into that parking lot, I would just say I don't eat Taco Bell, and I would keep driving, and it would be tough sometimes because you just were like, oh, it's so dumb, it's just like one taco or something, but nope, I owned it. And in that whole year, well, what was really cool is the more that you say it, and I encourage you, like when you're in a situation where you're faced with one of your actionable goals, and you're saying, I do this or I don't do this, say it out loud. Like it's so empowering to hear you say it and you own that identification of that choice that you've made. And other people hear you, like when I'd be in the car, and for a while Justin would joke about it, and he'd laugh and say, you don't eat Taco Bell, and I was like, you're right, I don't eat Taco Bell. But it helps like him reinforce that choice that I've made. And in the whole year, we broke down and got it once, and that was it. I've had Taco Bell once in a whole year. And the funny part about it is that I didn't even enjoy it. It's like it had been so long that you don't realize how kind of gross something is until you don't have it for a long time, and then you eat it and you're like, oh, this isn't as good as I remembered, because you're kind of just in this addictive cycle of the fats and the sugars, and it's the expectation of a taste that's familiar, but then when you cut it out completely and you're eating more healthy, flavorful foods all the time, and then you go back to that, it's gross. It was gross. So I haven't had it since then either. So, and I have no motivation to go back. Like I literally like will joke about it and I'll say I don't eat Taco Bell, but I mean it. Like I just don't even have the desire to go to Taco Bell any longer. So yay! But that's what we want to do with these goals. Like I hope that's a good example. But for each of these questions where you went through and wrote down what you should be doing, compare it to what you're currently doing. If you didn't write it down, if you go to fooddance.org and go to the healthy habits section, look at the 5 W's and how page, and all of those answers are there. Examples, like the Taco Bell examples on there for you guys. There's a walkthrough of just what we did today. So you can use that if you didn't write them down as I was talking. and write these goals for yourself. If you're struggling with any, feel free to email me. You can put messages down in the chat below. If you want to share any, great. Like people that can identify with you, we're all humans and we all have similar flaws and foibles or whatever. Um, so that support is there. I mean, that's the whole point of Food Dance is we want to not only promote nutrition and making healthy changes, but support you in that journey. So if you have questions, concerns, um, need a strategy, I mean, again, we're going to talk about strategies on day 3, but I'm happy to answer questions in the meantime. I kind of broke this up along a few days just so it's not as overwhelming because making big changes like this that are going to be long-term changes, it's a lot. So I'm trying to do it in small chunks. Even if you watch these videos this week, you don't even have to, I mean, they're available to you. So you could work on this for a whole week if you need to, and then next week watch the second video. Or if you want to watch them all and then go back and actually do the activities, I encourage you to do them while you're watching the video because it'll kind of keep you on task and hold you accountable. But everybody's busy and we get that. So I'm glad that you're taking the steps to improve your health. So tomorrow we're going to move into what I titled Foodie Finder, where we're going to identify your nutrition motivations and the things that block you from making more nutritional decisions. Um, based on those behaviors. So, and I've got a ton of my own that I can give examples for, and many of you might share those, or you'll have your own struggles. And then, but first, we're going to identify them, much like we did today in rewriting our story. First, you got to kind of find where you're at, and then once those are identified, then on the third day, we're going to talk about strategies to overcome those blocks that you might have so they aren't blocks anymore and your new methods will become habitual and second nature, and eventually you won't need these extra tools, or they'll just be in place all the time and support you for the rest of your life. So all right, happy day 1. You guys did it. Woo! And hopefully you learned some things about yourself today and thought about your relationship with food, which many of us have never really done before, and we'll keep on the journey. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.